Hello everyone. So my name is Sadaf Sajjad and I belong to Austin Community College. I teach for psychology department. My specialties, my specific area of research is human growth and development and some introduction to psychology aspects which I'm just trying to introduce some basic concepts of psychology so that any of my students who want to pursue in this field they should have that idea of areas of psychology. So today we will be talking about some very interesting aspect of human growth and development. It has lots of perspective, but I'm coming with a perspective that's how your developmental years are initially related to making up your self-identity and how your self-identity is going to become your social identity, and then how your social identity is going to impact the world, and every individual is putting their part to play in this whole world, and that's bringing social justice, which we all human beings are striving for. So this is my topic: fairy tales, social identity, and social justice. So let's start the lecture, and let me first introduce you to some objectives. At the end of this lecture, what we are going to grasp are these: some impact of fairy tales on social identity and development of prejudice, early developmental years and role of harmony in making that identity, fairy tales as a tool to build social identity, and analysis of some famous fairy tales. We will be doing that in this lecture. Then what is the relationship of all this with social justice? And then at the end, I'll be suggesting some to visit fairy tales or some solutions. So let's start. So the fairy tales we tell are the change we make. That's what it is. These stories work. And how do we know that these stories work? We can tell you that these stories work because we know from our personal experience that it works. And I can go by my own personal experience. It was my developmental years that complexion of my skin became important. And that time, in my school, I was in 4th grade. A play was arranged on Cinderella. And that was the time when I was excited to give the audition. I gave the audition. And I heard my teacher saying to the other teacher that she acts the best Cinderella. I know I was good at acting. But the complexion of that other girl is better than my complexion. So if I was fair, I was beautiful, like Cinderella. That was the first thought came into my mind. And I used to encounter such comments while I was growing up on several occasions. And I never really knew how to react these comments. I heard remarks like these so many that it is clear I subconsciously took them to my heart, and I noticed myself paying attention to the skin colors of others. And here comes that disturbance in my thinking. In doing so, I noticed that the lighter skinned girls are favored one way or another, the part of world where I belong. This is what my observation was. I remember coming home one day asking my mother if she would take me to a beauty store to buy fairness creams so that I look like a Cinderella. And my father said that you are more beautiful than a Cinderella. And then he came up with some stories of some women who were educationists. He took those stories from the actual Muslim history. And he gave me those stories. He said they were educationists, they were researchers like Lady Fatima, Lady Zainab. And he told me the stories of those women who stood up for social justice of this world. And their stories are very popular in this Muslim world. So I changed the concept of beauty. And he came up with those beautiful women. And he started telling me that how education will make you beautiful, how this is going to impact your whole life. That was the first concept I got, that there are degrees ahead of me, I can go for them, and I did my PhD. So how fairy tales can change your perspective for your life, your self-identity, what you are, how you are going to make this world a better place to live. What if I would have remained into that dilemma, into those very important developmental years? So it is difficult. My self-identity, my growing was a different person with lots of competitions going on in our life, and which is very unhealthy when we are just starting looking at the beauty with another perspective and comparing ourselves with those ideas, how we are disturbing the harmony of this world. So that's the personal story. Then there is another personal story I can share here. Once my friend's daughter, how she told me that she was into a gender crisis for one whole year, because her mother, while just trying to discipline her, said once that the girls never fart. And that was, the little girl said that I cannot relate it to myself. It means I am not a girl. So she came into that kind of crisis for one whole year when that was solved. And there's a Korean story, fairy tale related to all this, where it is the story of a Korean woman who produces loud, destructive farts, and when one fart severely damaged her husband's house, his family throws her out. However, her flatulence later proves beneficial to the family, and she was welcomed back. So that's like how these stories are related, and how women are taking, and then they are trying to, obviously in this story, they are trying to make a mend for that kind of thought, but this is how that can develop. And you never know who is going through which kind of crisis. So here was a crisis for a gender identity. Then again, we say that these stories work because research proves it. It's not only our personal experiences. The research says that the fairness cosmetic industry is a huge business in India, worth almost US $180 million, and growing at a rate of 10% to 15% annually. A typical advertisement of a fairness cream in India begins with portrayal of the many problems of dark-skinned people. Majority of skin lightening cosmetics target women, and they are likely to portray a dark-skinned woman as an underconfident and insecure person, and who is unable to secure success in life until someone suggests the use of some fairness cosmetic or cream. So that's scary. And then these stories work because it builds community and explains culture. And that's where our role of social justice comes. Human life depends on these stories. The sense of self are developed, the relationships constructed around shared stories, and the sense of purpose that stories propose, and the global aspect in those shared common norms. Now, what is happening to a child when a child is born? Child is born with some pre-programmed guidance. As we can see, when a child is born, it has some instincts in order to survive. For example, as a newborn infant, how did you know to do the things that you were never taught, just as sucking behavior? Child turns its head towards mother's milk. And there are so many researches which prove a child who comes in this world is coming with a basic instinct of survival, and that is leading that child to adopt certain behaviors, such as crying for food, such as turning the head towards mother's breast, and that is like a pre-programmed set inside a child. So typically, any computer you buy comes with a basic operating system which is pre-installed in it, which enables it to function on an elementary level, even though most of its memory is free for additional program and data. Even a newborn who weighs less than some laptop computers come with that pre-installed programming. And without the pre-programming to perform any action, a baby would starve. That's why it is essential. So coming to this point, when these instincts are there, pre-programmed, what is the instinct for human nature? Is human nature good or bad? There are debates on it. Why human nature is, how can we prove that when we are born, we are having some instinct related to our nature? We are basically good. We are born good. And we will be attracted towards good. And that there were 7 experiments done with lots of participants, more than 2,000, which suggest that we are not intuitively selfish creatures. But we, later on, we can show any kind of trait in our life. So are we naturally cooperative, or we are cooperative simply because it is rewarded? Both are related. And this world where it pays to play well with others, cooperation helps us make friends, gain social approval, and find social success in a wide range of domains. Whether our automatic impulse, our first instinct, that is our automatic impulse, is to act selfishly or cooperatively. So the experiments carried out in another study, and they asked 341 participants from nationwide sample about their daily interactions. And what they found, the relationship between processing speed, that is intuition, and cooperation only existed for those who reported some form of primarily cooperative interactive learning in early life. So creating empathy in very early life is basic to human growth and development. This suggests that cooperation is the intuitive response only for those who routinely engage in interaction where this behavior is rewarded. That human goodness may result from the acquisition of a regularly rewarded trait. Role of fairy tales can be played here, and it plays an integral part to develop such kind of interaction. So that's important. How a human strive for reaching its highest potential now? According to motivational theory, that's Maslow's hierarchy theory, very famous Maslow's hierarchy theory, every human being is motivated to gain its highest peak of potential, and that's like every human being is going towards that self-actualization feeling, want to feel complete. If your basic needs are fulfilled, your love needs, your security needs are fulfilled, you will reach that potential. So human beings are striving for reaching its potential. We are always in that journey of reaching that potential. Everyone has to find their potential, their goals in this life. So what are the role of fairy tales in it? So we can use variety of tools to reach that potential, and fairy tale is a primary basic tool which we can use for any individual to reach that kind of potential at their early developmental years. So the vampires, fairies, witches, and pirates help our little ones improve their social and learning skills, to know them what is good and bad. It has impact on their psychosocial factors, that's perception of their reality. It is affecting them, their cognitions. What is cognitions? It's some mental processes going on, like thinking processes, beliefs, attitudes towards life, and creativity and reasoning skills are enhanced in that manner. It also impacts the intellectual and language development, and it teaches morals and reading comprehension, obviously. So fairy tools can be used as a tool in these early developmental years to bring that identity related to all these aspects. These have long-term implications, these fairy tales. Preschoolers, there was a research done in which preschoolers who engage in violent pretend play only and no teaching through stories are less empathetic, that was found. Less likely to help other children and more likely to engage in antisocial behavior later on. That was a research done. And that's the role of a fairy tale, which can be used as a tool to guide in adopting any kind of identity through these aspects, psychosocial, cognitive, and intellectual. How we are building our social identity and self-identity first. So basically, the self-identity is awareness of yourself. In identification with oneself as a separate individual, while social identity is person's sense of who they are based on their membership in that group. And this can give rise to, like, let's say, us versus them. I'll be discussing it in further talk, that what is us versus them. And then what is one's sense of belonging to an ethnic group, race, gender, which is defined as a personal conception of oneself as male or female. So fairy tales as a nurturing tool is to create harmony, which is very important, that initially in 7 years of child's life, we develop some kind of identity in them and some kind of social identity in them. One is self-identity, one is social identity. So how to develop that through these fairy tales. So basically, world justice is disturbed when there is no harmony in these aspects, or prejudice or discrimination kind of behavior occurs because the early role of learning, when we are making our identities, we start making our thinking pattern in a manner that we start thinking in a us versus them pattern. My group, their group, my neighborhood, their neighborhood, my nation, their nation. This us versus them is a common thing, like my skin color, their skin color, that skin color. This is us versus, we very early in our life start distinguishing our world into us versus them aspect. And we see things in us versus them, my class, their class. So this is one of the factors which give rise to prejudice. Another is the cognitive sources. What are the stereotypes things? What are our thinking patterns? What are typical stereotypes which exist in this world, which is building my, which is actually contributing to my thinking of discrimination or prejudice? Then there's a role of social learning, how my people around me are acting towards certain nation, neighborhood, color, caste, these kinds of things that we are learning in our initial years. And then what is the relation of colorism, which I gave you the example of skin tones, different skin tones, that people might succeed. And that might create an insecurity in anyone if they look like, looking at the skin color, and they found differences in dealing in the world by looking at the skin color only. This is the thing which I want to come on now, that how we are disturbing the harmony of our kids, or how we can keep them in a harmony at a very early stage of their lives. So harmony and justice, because if we are not in harmony within ourselves, we are not in harmony with this world. We need to find peace in ourselves first, while we are developing our identity, and then we will be a peaceful person living in that world. So that harmony is definitely individual harmony within us is related to the world. We cannot approach a situation in abstract concept of just equality, but with the lens of harmony, by focusing on what distinguishes it and what is particular and unique about this person in light of the social roles that they play, the social relations, practices, rituals, and institutions they are embedded. Now, what I am trying to say is that if we are not in harmony with what we have been given, let's say a child born with the anatomy of male body, and the child's self-identity has been disturbed in the initial years of their life, and he or she is not accepting himself in that body, the harmony is disturbed somewhere. That is going to create problem. If a child is born in a let's say, in a culture where the norms for that child, let's say we born in this culture, in American culture, here we are born, and we are following certain norms, and we are not with harmony of accepting those norms, that might disturb our harmony. We are not accepting that norms as a person, as an individual. That might disturb me when I am not in compliance with those norms. That might disturb me. I was born in Pakistan, and when I was born, the school system in Pakistan is that they are just keeping everything in English language. So most of the parents would like their children to learn English language. They are speaking Urdu at their home. Everyone is speaking Urdu. They are promoting Urdu. They are promoting literature. But most of the time, children are speaking Urdu language. But when they are going to school, they have to learn English. Everything is English. That's a good thing. They should learn different language in order to, learning is never hurting anyone. But when they are not in harmony, when they listen someone saying that this poor guy doesn't know English, and someone is shy to speak just because they don't know to speak in English, and they are shy. They are disturbing their internal harmony, because they can speak very well in their own language, but since they are not able to speak English, that is disturbing their harmony. They are not at peace at that time. So that might disturb the peace of other people around them. So these are the things we have to, first of all, be peace within us. And that's no matter what crises are there. There could be gender crisis, there could be culture crisis, there could be religion crisis, the institute we belong to, the place we have born, the social setup we are looking around. We need to see things according to that. And it's not that we are complying everything, but it's that we have to be in harmony with everything what we are. That will make ourselves into that kind of peace, and that will bring the harmony. So combination of different faculties in human being and how they develop in harmony can be biological, psychological, cognitive, and social. That should be in harmony with each other. That will bring social justice. And now we will be finding the roles of these fairy tales and how they might disturb or keep our harmony within this culture. Some brief analysis of some fairy tales, which are globally known to many people, so many people, such as Cinderella. Cinderella story just like she has to good look for the ball, otherwise a prince will not dance with her. She is dependent on external features. That's the fairy godmother, and she has to look good through her clothes. She has to look good and dance so that prince can look at her and her life miseries will be solved. So what about Cinderella? What is her identity? If I have to write a paper on Cinderella, would it be my ideal character to adopt, or should I go into the imagination of someone coming and helping me when I'm in misery? And at that early stage of my life, when I'm going through that developmental years, are these the clothes which will make me fit into that big palace? So these were the questions which I'm just keeping for the brainstorming for you. Snow White. Snow White serves 7 male dwarfs. Prince kisses her, and she wakes up, and everyone knows this story. And there's a cultural difference from the Islamic culture, but everyone reads this story, where before marriage, no type of physical touch is allowed by religion. And yet this story is known to every child, everywhere, no matter Muslim, non-Muslim, everywhere. So there's a harmony disturbance now with the culture, with the norms of that society, and with that tale, which is known to every child. The Little Mermaid, who sacrificed her voice to get her legs so that she can marry or see the prince. So she has to lose her identity, actually. It's what she was. She was meant to live in the water, and she had to lose the identity to come on the earth. So do we have to lose our identity in order to gain something? Or this world will be more peaceful place if we keep our identity and accept each other? So that is going to disturb the social justice, this kind of belief. That's my analysis. Some impacts of fairy tales, overall impacts. Typically, the child identifies with the good hero, not because of his goodness, but because the child is positively attracted to the hero. Now remember, basically, a child is born on a best good nature. Fairy tales give meaning to the inner and external conflicts experienced by children in a complex, incomprehensible, and hardship-filled world. Fairy tales help in appeasing the fears experienced at various developmental stages. Yes, we can use it as a tool to do that. Positive perspective about life, they give that, while answering a child's deep need for justice. And distinguish between good and bad of that they can do, reinforce for the real good potential inside. The development of the child's psyche is positively influenced by what they see and what they read. Author of Once Upon a Time, Marina Warner, illustrate how children begin to see symbols in the tales they read. They learn to see the forest as the unknown, and the palace as classism, and the poisoned apple as the concealed truths. We live in a society where we do have these cultural global norms. And yes, fairy tales, the one very famous, all the fairy tales, we all know them. Cultural norms are the shared values which we, as a value and as a belief, we share with each other, and which can affect people's behavior in a collective manner. And that can produce some gender roles, some concept of beauty, the internet, TV stories, and many, many more. So our gender roles, there are multiple researches done on gender stereotyping. I also did a research in gender stereotyping in 3 different countries, Pakistan, Malaysia, and Japan, where I lived. And in these 3 countries, I did a gender stereotyping, and I found the same gender stereotyping traits on women and men. Some traits are allocated only to men, and some are to women on all these 3 cultures. So we are having that global sense of stereotyping men and women in these roles. And that was not different from one culture to another culture. There is a research on it. The concept of beauty, which fairy tales introduces that beauty is good and ugly is bad. And the main characters are always handsome or gorgeous, and the villain is always the ugly, wicked witch or troll of some sort. If I asked anyone, I used to do these exercises in my class a lot of time. I asked my students, okay, bring someone very ugly in your mind and draw that person. So you will be just surprised to hear that the drawings are most of the time same kind of drawings. And even when I was researching, I was making a video computer game for healing purpose of some psychological problems of children. I was making a video game that was a therapeutic game. So in that game, I needed a monster. So a monster which can be the enemy of that children, and they needed to kill that monster. That's the bad guy. So I wanted the picture of a monster from my little population, and they drew that monster, and then I embedded that as an animation into my game. And that monster was the same, one big eye with so many hands, and the common feature were the same. They used the same kind of figure which they imagined. So further research into this area, and I found that there some kind of images they have of the monster from their fairy tales or their media. So that they have that ugly face in their mind. So everyone has a same kind of ugly face, a beautiful face. So we have that common beauty concept about beauty. And then we are like subconsciously programmed to favor attractive people with the correlation that they are good. Therefore, we need to work on the physical concept of beauty. Human lives depend on the stories we tell, the sense of self that those stories may develop, the relationship constructed around shared stories, and the sense of purpose that stories propose, and the global aspect in those shared common norms. And beauty globally is like, for example, just taking one example of Cinderella, who was the Cinderella which was depicted by a animator, very famous, all English speakers know and love, can be traced to the French story Cendrillon, first published in 1697 by Charles Perrault, though Chinese and Greek versions of this classic tale go back to the 9th century and 6th century. But today there are over 500 variants of Cinderella in Europe alone, and it's no surprise then that describing something as a Cinderella story has become a go-to reference for English speakers worldwide. And this is a picture of Mary Blair, who made that drawing for the Cinderella for the Disney, and that was her concept of beauty which he just depicted, and that is now the concept of beauty. Cinderella was beautiful for all over the world. So one person make that drawing and applied it to everyone. Every child going through this story is now imagining a Cinderella beautiful the way she has depicted it. She had that level or that kind of definition of beauty which she has depicted in her drawings. And our definition of beauty is different from one another. We can be different. So fairy tales brings hope that we can work on global social justice by investing on our children and changing this world. And the thematic areas which most fairy tales deals with by using a symbolic language and transfer are the following. These are some common things: fear of being abandoned by parents, conflicts within the family, sibling rivalries, social maturity, process towards autonomy, acceptance of negative and positive traits of self and parents, acquisition of gender identity problems in puberty, parent-child relationships, and mother, daughter, father, son, daughter, father, all these relationships. Emotional integration, all carefully designed tales are meaningful on many levels and help the child build her internal and external reality. That was the psychoanalytical approach. It gives us better self-awareness and awareness of others, development of emotional intelligence, development of healthy self-concept and sense of identity, development of human morality and cultural sensitivity. And by bringing this harmony in early childhood years, placing things in right place, that is justice. That is what we can do. And justice is all about harmony. Harmony in your physical well-being, in your emotional well-being, your psychological well-being, and your social well-being. So starting from a very primitive level, that is your physical well-being, and then going to the more advanced levels that are emotional well-being, psychological, and social. Some of the suggestions which can be given: we need to revisit our fairy tales. In order to look for a justice world, we have to start from the very beginning. There is a very famous approach in social psychology, in altruistic psychology, when we discuss altruism. Why do we help others? Why do we empathize with others? One of the reason why we help others is because we have that promotive tension approach within us. means we all are following the same goal of seeking our potential. We just want to seek our best potential. We all have that same goal. And when human beings are following same goals, they are trying to help each other in finding their goal. For example, two students, both they are friends, both need to strive to get their A grade, to get admission, maybe UT Austin, and they are trying to get their A grade. They are helping each other in getting that A grade, just because their goal is same. They want to land in that university with each other. So they are trying to help each other. If one student finds something interesting or something more knowledgeable, she or he might share with her friend. So that promotive tension approach says that we all human belong to that one goal, that we want to strive to get our potential, and we are helping each other to get each other's potential, rather than just disturbing them by making ourselves insecure. And that insecurity is disturbing our harmony, and that's disturbing everyone's harmony. That's what we need to revisit. We need to be culturally literate. In order to bring this harmony, we need to be culturally literate. We need to look at other cultures so that we don't have to see anything with our perspective only. That's what I gave the example of Cinderella, the beautiful character originated by someone's idea of beauty. But that's not right. In different cultures, there could be a different concept of beauty. We need to work on religious and global literacy and peace and conflict situation. Nowadays, I'm taking my human growth and psychology classes, and we are just discussing the growth with respect to the war areas. Wherever the war is going on, how it is going to impact that child living there in maybe early childhood, maybe middle childhood, maybe adolescence. What's going to affect that child? So we need to know what are the peace elements around the world going on, and we need to look for them and embed those into our stories, how that child is developing and how that child might be not in harmony with any of his or her surroundings, and how we need to be aware of all those things. That was all about this topic, for fairy tales, social justice, social identity, and how it is related to social justice. And some of my quotations. When I examine myself and my methods of thought, I come to the conclusion that the gift of fantasy has meant more to me than any talent for abstract, positive thinking. Albert Einstein. And we all need to imagine, we need to imagine ourselves in that the world which can be ideal, and we can make that world then. The world changes according to the way people see it, and if you alter even by a millimeter the way people look at reality, then you can change it. And together we will change the world. Thank you.